The Cheney started its life as a bass fly. Somewhere in its history, somebody decided to change the feathers used for the wings and turned it into a trout fly. I am tying this fly from the illustration in Mary Orvis Marbury's book, Favorite Flies and Their Histories. I'm putting it on a number 6 sproat straight shank, straight eye hook with green thread. I'm using green thread because of the illustration and the green that appears to be added to the head, although I will not be putting the green in the tail as the illustration shows. For the tail, I'm using a slip of barred woodduck flank, tying it in a little bit long. Try to keep it on top of the shank. I'm going to wrap down to get it tied in, clip off the butt end, and then I'll come back down to the bend of the hook, and I'm going to go underneath of the tail a couple times just to make sure that the tail doesn't lay down along the bend of the hook. I'm tying in a 4/0 silk black thread to use for the rib. The body is two-parted. First part of the body is white, and I'm using a white floss for that. I'll tie that white floss in. I'm not real worried of keeping that body real smooth since I'm going to use the floss to taper. Get that tied all the way back to the bend of the hook, and then I will take my thread up halfway because that's where I'm going to change the color on the body, and then I'm going to wrap up to that halfway point with the floss, and then I will come back down towards the bend to start to build a taper. And then come back up towards the center to where my thread is. I want a little bit heavier taper than that. My floss is kind of starting to pull apart, but that'll be all right. I am going to let it taper down here at the center also, and then when I put in my second color, which will be red floss, I will just wrap up over that little bit of taper. A few wraps over the top, a few underneath. I can clip out my extra floss, and then I'll take that black thread and spiral wrap the rib. There is rib only on what I'm calling the abdomen. Since I'm using two colors on the body, I'm going to call the white part the abdomen and then the red part the thorax. So I'll spiral wrap the rib onto the abdomen. Wrap up over that, 3 wraps over the top, 3 underneath. That catches and locks that in, clip that out. I'll tie in some red floss, wrap over that end to get it well tied in, and I'm going to bring my thread all the way back to the center point here where the red and the white connect, and make sure that I'm well tied in there, and then bring my thread up out of the way. And then I'm going to just start wrapping at the center point, and I'll wrap up to where I will tie off, come back and build the body with the red floss, and then I'll be leaving room at the front of the hook behind the eye to tie in the wings and the front hackle. just keep wrapping this red floss until I have the body built up to match the size of the taper of the abdomen. And then if it tapers off here at the eye end, that's fine. It's easier to tie it in when it's a little bit tapered there, although having a little bit of a edge there will make it easier to get the wings to stand up. I'll go ahead and tie that off. 3 wraps over, 3 wraps under. Clip out the extra. I don't have the actual feather that Mary used, or that was used when the trout version of the Cheney was tied. What I do have is this saddle feather. So the instructions or the commentary about the Cheney in Mary Orvis Marbury's book, Favorite Flies and Their Histories, says that for the trout version they used wing feathers from the jungle cock. I don't have wing feathers from the jungle cock, and these saddle feathers were actually not easy to come by either. You have to have a full saddle in order to find them, as they come off of the back side of the saddle, the bottom, the tail side of the saddle. But these look very close to the feathers in the illustration, so I'm going to clip the tips out of these two and tie them in for the wing. So I'm measuring the size of the wing that I want, kind of lining up the hook bend in a straight up line, and then I'm going to pull down on the butt barbs and give this a crew cut. So just cut the barbs right real close to the rachis. Since we're tying 2 of those in, we got to do it twice. Put those 2 feathers back to back, and then I'm going to put 1 on each side of my shank. Pinch those in. Try to catch just the tips there, the butt ends. And I'm going to wrap back a little bit because I need some room for hackle and a head. Get them to sit properly together. And clip out that rachis. Then for the hackle, I have some yellow saddle feathers. I'll do the same thing with that saddle feather. Just clean off the butt end. Tie it in with the shiny side away. And clip off that little bit of stem, rachis. And I'll grab that feather with my hackle plier. And then I'll take a few wraps, keeping the shiny or outside of the feather towards the hook eye so that the fibers curve back towards the bend of the hook. And then I'll catch in the tip. It's a pretty soft saddle feather, so I do get more of the kind of soft hackle look to it. Pull back on all the hackle fibers and then wrap up over that feather tip. Find that tip, snap it out, and then finish wrapping the head. The heads on the flies that Mary tied were quite large because she was tying gut in to the eyeless hooks first. And gut is the gland from inside the caterpillar, the silk moth caterpillar, that was pulled out of the caterpillar, stretched, and twisted into a strand that was used either for the eye or for a leader with an eye on it. I'll put a whip finish. Just push my scissors against the thread. In a contemporary twist to this old fly, I will drop some diluted goop on the head. I think it's pronounced Cheney, Cheney, a favorite fly from the middle to late 1800s, featured as one of the trout flies in Favorite Flies and Their Histories by Mary Orvis Marbury.